Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel. Today we're continuing the Swamp Thing read-along with issue number 32. This is a really strange issue. I remember way back when I first read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, I did not know what was going on in this issue. It seemed really strange and out of nowhere. Um, Especially coming off of something as intensely horrific as the Arcane trilogy, a storyline that dealt in like incest and returning from the dead, zombies, this really horrifying imagery, stuff like that. And then we get what you're going to see in here, just something very cartoonish and very bizarrely out of this world. And I'll preface this by saying that it helps to have context for this story, to know Walt Kelly, the cartoonist, and his comic strip Pogo. I had no context for that when I first read these comics so long ago. Even now that I know who Walt Kelly is, and I know I've read a handful of Pogo strips, he was a great cartoonist. The strip was anthropomorphic characters who were doing surprisingly, satirical. It was surprisingly satirical comics that were really making a statement and being kind of politically minded. And Alan Moore is trying to pay homage to that and emulate that here. But even with that context, this is a strange book. Let's get into it. The cover is by Stephen Bissette and John Totleben. Swamp Thing wrestling some gators in the swamp. It's a really good image. I think it's a solid cover. But when we open up to the interiors, things right away start to look very different. We have something shooting across the moonlit sky, and the narration is not the dark, brooding Alan Moore narration that we're used to. Instead, it's this log from a starship of these little creatures that are traveling the galaxy looking for, as they call it, the lady. They're looking for the lady, and we get their ship coming across the sky. We get an interior view where we get a little sneak peek of what these guys look like in their little spacesuits. It's some weird worm creature in a tank. We get a close-up of the ship. We can see that it's just a big turtle shell. It's actually just a big turtle, as we'll see shortly. We get more views of the interior of these characters. And in the narration, we are being introduced to the language of these characters. It's in English, but they use portmanteau words that are made up, which I'm sure Alan Moore had a ton of fun with. And I'll point out some fun examples as they come up. But these guys are landing on Earth in the swamps of Louisiana, and I have a feeling they're going to bump into Swamp Thing. So their turtle ship lands. Name of the issue is Pog. Guest artist is Shawn McManus. Shawn McManus did the Burial issue that we covered earlier. I highly recommend going back and starting this series from the beginning if you haven't, but you can check out The Burial to get an intro to Shawn McManus' work. He is a little bit more cartoony of an artist than Bissette or Veitch, and I think that really works well in this issue because it is supposed to be cartoony. It's supposed to be emulating these cartoon strip characters. McManus is penciling and inking. He's the sole credited artist. And obviously, we've got Alan Moore on the script. The turtle lands and peeks its head out and checks the atmosphere. And this is where we get some of the portmanteau words. I'll read his little dialogue bubble here. Atmosphericals about tolerable to middling, and gravity's sufficient to keep the stump water setting in the stump. By my calculatements, you can disentrail with complete diplomatic impunity. And from his side, a door opens, and our little creatures come out. We never get to see these creatures. Well, we don't get to see most of them without their masks on. So what Shawn McManus does, and what I'm sure Alan Moore instructed was for each of them to be distinct in their costume in some way, or at least in their silhouette. Obviously, the green guy, he's a lot taller and he's got a big tail, so he kind of stands out. He's kind of more of an alligator type. The main character, Pog, he's got a red jumpsuit. The alligator's got green. This other character, not only is he purple, but he's got these weird tendrils that come out of his body. So, kind of that, I forget what Neil Gaiman phrased it as exactly, but something about putting an interesting hat on your character to immediately make them stand out and make them identifiable. So we can tell these three characters apart by body shape and by the color of their suits and by some certain detail. There's another orange guy here, and an additional detail for him is that the top of his head, the suit is a little floppy. So if we had this in complete black and white, if we didn't have Tatiana Wood's color, we'd still be able to tell all these characters apart. There's also some characters that look like Pog, but they are smaller, and other than the fact that they're blue, they also have no thin tail. So, defining characteristics to make it easier to introduce and tell these characters apart. They are looking around our planet, and they keep calling it the Lady. So we get the sense that what they were looking for was a new planet, and we'll get a little bit deeper into that as well. They meet a cute little, I guess, little opossum or something that dangles from a tree. They try to talk to him, obviously to no avail. He doesn't know what they're saying. But they're wandering through the swamps, and sure enough, boom, we recognize that leg. We recognize those roots, that root structure. They bump into Swamp Thing. I love this splash page. This is a really fun. This is why Shawn McManus was a good choice for this particular issue. I think this is really cartoony and works really, really well. I love the color choices by Tatiana Wood of having the extreme yellow illumination, the way it offsets with the red of the suit, the green of the suit, and also the way it lights up Swamp Thing's eyes and just body. It looks really good. These little guys, they don't know what to make of Swamp Thing. He tries to speak, and we could see in his lettering, it's gibberish to them. So they panic. One of them takes out this weird gun thing, shoots him, and knocks him out. And so they tie up Swamp Thing. They leave Pog behind to kind of watch him, and the rest of them go to explore the rest of the swamp. Swamp Thing wakes up and tries to talk to Pog again, and Pog realizes, like, oh, this is not just a vegetable. He's an actual life form. He's an intelligent life form because he's trying to communicate. So he takes his restraints off, and they shake hands. Swamp Thing kind of senses that there is no threat from these guys, and you could kind of see it in the face. We only get the window of the eyes around Pog throughout the issue, and his eyes are very expressive. It's another good reason. It's another good usage of Shawn McManus's art for that. But they start to try to communicate just through pictures, and it's through these pictures their presence in the swamp is being explained to Swamp Thing and to the reader. And so Pog explains that in the planet where they came from, all the different animal folk were living in harmony. We get a few more portmanteau words, which I'll point out because Alan Moore put a lot of effort into this. But nobody showed any disrespect to their lady, I guess disregard or neglect. All of the creatures in the critterdom confraternated pleasably. Everyone got along together, is what they're saying. But there was one group of animals that stood apart, and he describes it that they created they were a solid tribal breed of misanthropomorphs, which is a great word, misanthropic anthropomorphs, that they created their own civilization, and they exclusified any kind else from joining. So they didn't stick with the other animal folk. They wanted to do their own thing, and it made them the loneliest creatures of all. It also made them extremely um, they treated the rest of the animals very poorly. This single tribe basically took control of the planet, performed terrible experiments on the rest of the animals. They put them in slaughterhouses. They ate them, things like that. And this is like really the only horror bits that we get from this issue here. Some scenes of that as Pog has the sorrowful look in his eyes about it. So meanwhile, as he's telling the story to Swamp Thing, the little gator guy, he's found some water. He wants to maybe take a dip. So after Pog is done explaining, Swamp Thing reaches his hand out and says, "Follow me. I got to show you something." And on the bottom here, the little crocodile is relaxing in the water, sees some eyes watching him. And on the next page, the Swamp Thing has brought Pog to a concession stand where humans are. These are the first human beings of the issue, and they are not very good looking. It's not a flattering portrait. We got some out of shape folks walking away with tons of burgers, some ugly eating of hot dogs, cooking some greasy burgers, greasy food. And Pog goes, "Oh no, not here as well. They can't own this lady too." So pretty on the nose that human beings are similar to the creatures that Pog was describing on his planet, as we are the animals of Earth that decided that we were better than the rest, that we treat the other animals on the planet as secondary or just fulfilling our needs. And to really emphasize the heartbreak here and the bleakness, the little cartoony cute gator is faced with the real thing, these alligators, and they're very upset. They look very angry, and they attack our cute little cartoon friend. And he screams as Swamp Thing and Pog are coming back to the swamp. They try to run after where the screams are coming from. And this is just a sad, sad image between two gator mouths. The little guy, his limbs are hanging loose. His tail is hanging really limp. You could tell it's already over for him. Swamp Thing does jump in so we can get a little bit of action in this issue. And he fights these alligators. Pretty fun. I like this shot here. That's a really fun, camera angle, the above shot. But it's already too late. Pog has to hold the dead body of his friend, who's again really selling that just limpness of the dead body. Very sad. They bring him back to the ship where they hold a burial. They hold a little ceremony where they commit him to the earth that they thought was going to be their new lady. The turtle ship sings a dirge. Again, this is right after the Arcane trilogy. This is, if you're just a normal mainstream comic reader in 1984 and you're loving Swamp Thing because it's of the extreme horror of it and the intensity, and then this issue happens, aren't you going to be confused? I certainly was. I still am. I can't believe that this got the thumbs up from Karen Berger. But I guess at this point, Alan Moore was like, he proved himself. They're just going to let him do whatever he wants. So the aliens get back in the turtle ship and they blast off and they go to look for another lady elsewhere. Next up, Rite of Spring. That's actually not quite true. The next issue is a kind of a reprint. I'll show you what I mean when we get there. But Rite of Spring is coming up soon, and that's an excellent issue. But yeah, that's Pog. The letters column, I did read the letters here. For these letters, these are people reacting to Swamp Thing 25, which was the Sleep of Reason. If you go back and watch that video, I talked about how that was like an issue that I think is one of the best of the run, and that is certainly being reflected here. But the people's reactions, people are really sold on Alan Moore. People, you got new readers that are coming in. People that were diehards of Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson, who thought the franchise and series was dead, who have been completely sold by Alan Moore. So people are digging it. I cannot wait. I hope I have the issue where we get the letters for Pog. I want to see the reactions to Pog really, really badly. Um, I I still don't know how I feel about this issue. I think it's good. I think the cartooning by Shawn McManus is good. The story's a little on the nose, but it's still okay. It doesn't have that flavor that I really like about Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run, but it's still pretty good. I'm going to leave it up to you guys in the comments to let me know what you really like about this issue. I'm sure that there's somebody out there who is a big defender of this, so I would love to hear your take on it. Um, it's good. It's definitely not my favorite. Maybe not really for me, but that's all. We'll be back next week with issue number 33. Thank you for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.